Imagine a world where martial arts were rigid, bound by rules that hadn't changed for centuries. A world where fighters followed tradition without question. But then came Bruce Lee, a man who shattered these norms, broke free from the constraints of traditional martial arts and created something entirely new. What if I told you that the very systems of martial arts that had been preserved for generations were no match for Bruce Lee's revolutionary thinking? Lee didn't just fight opponents in the ring. He fought against the very philosophies that held martial arts back. This is the story of how Bruce Lee refused to conform, rewrote the rulebook, and sparked a martial arts revolution that still echoes today. Let's dive into how Bruce Lee broke the rules and changed the way we think about martial arts forever. 2. Traditional martial arts, a rigid system. Before Bruce Lee, martial arts were like a sacred tradition. Each discipline, whether it was karate, kung fu, or taekwondo, was taught through fixed techniques, structured forms, and rigid philosophies passed down from generation to generation. These styles were designed to preserve ancient techniques, but over time, they became more about maintaining the status quo than pushing boundaries. Fighters were expected to follow specific moves, never deviating from the style they were trained in. The goal was perfection of form, not adaptation to real combat situations. In many ways, martial arts had become stagnant. The focus was on mastering a particular school of thought, rather than evolving or improving based on the reality of combat. For Bruce Lee, this approach felt limiting. He saw martial arts as much more than a set of predefined techniques. It was an expression of oneself. 3. Bruce Lee's philosophy. Rejecting limitations. Bruce Lee's philosophy was simple yet radical. Using no way as way, having no limitation as limitation. This idea broke away from the idea that any one style could define a martial artist. Lee believed that true mastery came not from adhering to rigid rules but from adapting to every situation with complete freedom. He developed his own martial art, Jeet Kune Do, based on this philosophy. Jeet Kune Do wasn't a new style with its own forms and techniques. Instead, it was a fluid approach to combat, one that emphasized practicality and effectiveness over tradition. Lee often said, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is not." This was his core belief. Martial arts should be about what works for you, not about blindly following a particular style. For Bruce Lee, breaking free from limitations meant rejecting tradition in favor of innovation. 4. Challenging traditions. Fluid combat over fixed forms. Bruce Lee believed that real combat didn't follow a script. Fights were unpredictable, fluid, and fast-paced, completely different from the choreographed forms of traditional martial arts. To prepare for real combat, Lee began to challenge the very foundation of martial arts. He introduced elements from boxing, fencing, and other fighting systems, blending them into his own form of combat that was focused entirely on what worked in real-life situations. He saw no point in sticking to techniques that looked good but weren't practical. Lee emphasized speed, adaptability, and striking with purpose. He understood that being tied down to a single style limited a fighter's ability to respond to the complexities of real combat. This approach directly challenged the long-held traditions of martial arts, where mastery was measured by how well you followed the rules. Bruce Lee broke those rules entirely. The legacy. How Lee shaped modern martial arts. Bruce Lee's influence didn't just change martial arts in his lifetime, it shaped the future. Today we see his impact most clearly in mixed martial arts, or MMA. The very foundation of MMA, where fighters combine techniques from multiple styles, echoes Lee's philosophy of using what works and discarding what doesn't. His vision of fluid, adaptive combat became the bedrock of modern martial arts. Lee's legacy lives on in every fighter who trains not just in one style but across multiple disciplines, searching for the best approach to real-life combat. He proved that martial arts should be about breaking boundaries, not sticking to tradition. By challenging the old ways and refusing to accept limitations, Bruce Lee redefined martial arts, turning it into a constantly evolving art form. His legacy is one of innovation, courage, and the relentless pursuit of mastery.